UK's relationship with Scotland. After that, Alex Salmond gives his final speech as First Minister of Scotland. House Assistant Minority Leader James Clyburn says Democrats lost the midterm elections because they spent the time apologizing for being a Democrat. During a speech at the National Press Club, he said that Democrats should be proud to be the party of the little guy. He also said he supports President Obama's use of executive action on immigration, comparing it to Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. Representative Clyburn is the third-ranking Democratic member in the House, a primary liaison to the White House, and the highest-ranking African-American member of Congress. This is about 25 minutes.
You saw that?
Oh, Lord, did I?
That was me.
That was you?
That was me.
What happened?
I had to steal Chris Van Hollen's water from off the podium because CNN was telling me it was ruining the shot.
Oh.
So I'm infamous, huh?
It's not going to compare to when I knocked the sign down right in front of C-SPAN walking in front of McCaffrey. Okay, let's do it. Okay, so we're going to start now. Hi, I'm Bob Weiner. I'm the Newsmakers Committees of the National Press Club's event coordinator for this wonderful event today. Welcome to the National Press Club, the world's leading organization for journalists and where news happens. Today, we welcome an old friend, Congressman Jim Clyburn, the House Assistant Minority Leader, who will discuss governing and the issues in the post-midterms environment. Congressman Clyburn was just elected by the Democratic caucus as the Assistant Minority Leader again. For the, how many times now, Jim? Third time, great. President Barack Obama has said that Congressman Clyburn is one of a handful of people who, when they speak, the entire Congress listens. As Assistant Democratic Leader, Clyburn is one of the Democratic caucus's primary liaisons to the White House. He plays a prominent role in messaging and outreach. Congressman Clyburn is the nation's highest-ranking African-American member of Congress. He represents the 6th District of South Carolina. When he came to Congress in 1993, he was elected co-president of his freshman class and rose through the leadership ranks rapidly. He was elected chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus in 1999, and he built a reputation as a leader and consensus builder. He was elected House Democratic Caucus vice chair in 2002 in a three-way race, and 3 years later was unanimously elected chair of the Democratic Caucus. When Democrats regained the House majority in 2006, Congressman Clyburn was elevated by his colleagues to House Majority Whip. Congressman Clyburn was elected president of his NAACP youth chapter when he was 12 years old, helped organize many civil rights marches and demonstrations as a student leader at South Carolina State College, and met his wife Emily in jail during one of his incarcerations. I hope you'll tell us more on that story. Well, C-SPAN and others have asked what news will be made. In addition to governing and the issues in the post-midterms environment, Jim will, of course, answer the questions about what's going to happen on the immigration order. The health care law, will it be tweaked? Will it stay? What will happen to it? Will there be a shutdown threat, government financial threats, and impeachment? And why did the Democrats lose, and what's the prognosis for the future? So I'd like to introduce, all in the space of an hour. I'd like to introduce my wife, Pat, who puts up with all this organizing work that we do, Dr. Patricia Berg, Rebecca Vanderlyn. Rebecca will take the mic to the audience so that they will be able to answer questions. Since we promised C-SPAN we'd have an audience mic, so we will. Florian Promer. Florian, raise your hand. Evan Baumel, Joseph Abay, and our new intern, Autumn Kelly. Okay, and I want to thank your staff, Jim. Yebby Yelberton, is that his name? And your scheduling staff, and Patrick Devlin, your communications director. And so we will get underway. Jim will present a speech. He'll talk for maybe, I guess we're going to make it now 15 minutes so we can get a couple questions in. But Jim, go ahead and take it away.
Sure. Thank you very much, Bob. Pat, thank you for your long friendship. Bob and I go back to our young Democrat days when both of us had hair. and I was about 40 pounds smaller. He kept his weight. The bells just rang, so we're going to truncate this quite a bit, and I'll answer any questions. So I'm not going to get into the speech I had planned. Let me take first the most current thing, immigration. We did have a dinner with the president last night, and we discussed the executive order that is going to be issued, signed sometimes tonight or tomorrow. He will speak to the nation tonight about it, and I think he takes off for Nevada tomorrow to discuss exactly what it's all about. Now, many of you may know that I have for several years now been urging the president to use his executive authority to deal with immigration as well as with the debt limit. You may recall the deal on the debt limit was something I did not particularly like. I didn't like him being held up, the country being threatened, and I thought that he should use his executive authority. Now, there are a lot of people who debate whether or not that's beyond the law, and we've been hearing all of these discussions even this morning about the lawlessness. Well, let me tell you something. When Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, he was going beyond the law because the law mandated slavery. And by executive order, he got rid of slavery. Now, the big debate over the movie Lincoln was all about whether or not, after the presidency was over, whether or not we would have an amendment to the Constitution to maintain freedom for slaves, because the executive order would die with the president. So the fight was not over outlawing slavery. The fight was over putting it in the Constitution. Let's look at someone like more current, Truman. The Congress did not get rid of segregation in the armed services. Franklin Roosevelt wouldn't do it. But when Truman became president over an incident, Isaac Woodard, down in my state, an incident of a gentleman returning from World War II, going home, and being arrested, beaten by the sheriff and his deputies, and blinded. Truman saw that, and he decided that he would use his executive authority to outlaw such stuff and to integrate the armed services. That's how the armed services got integrated. And so I'm pleased that the president is moving on this. He will take his place alongside Abraham Lincoln and Harry Truman and many others in using the executive order to do big things. Now, are we going to have a government shutdown? I hope not. Will there be rumors of it? The rumors have already started. In fact, I saw a headline this morning where the senior senator from my state is asking his people to stop talking about impeachment. The fact of the matter is they're discussing it, and I have always maintained that there's an element within the Republican Party who would love to see this president go down in history with an asterisk next to his name. And that is what this is all about. There are going to be lawsuits. What president hadn't been sued? All of this high-level discussions of a lawsuit is all about driving a narrative more than doing what they have the authority to do. I used to run a state agency. I can't tell you how many times I was sued. So you make executive decisions, and you get sued for them, and that's what the courts are for, to determine whether or not the constitutionality or the legality of what you did, and then just move on. I'm still, I've been in office now in Congress for 22 years, so the lawsuits didn't keep me from getting here, and none of the lawsuits were successful. So let's have the lawsuits and let's go on about our business. Now, what happened on November 4th? What happened on November 4th was my party spending too much time, in my opinion, apologizing for being Democrats. we seem to feel that there's something wrong for being known as the party for the little guy, the party that address middle-income issues. I am proud that my party did Social Security, and a lot of the Democrats paid daily for that. Go back and read that history, and you will see how many Democrats lost their seats because Social Security was just the worst thing that they could possibly do. But today, everybody relishes in the fact that we are the party of Social Security. I'm proud of the fact that my party was a party that gave us Medicare and Medicaid. And we heard the other side saying how bad Medicare is, how bad Medicaid is. In fact, Newt Gingrich once said, I'm not against it, I just want to see it wither on the vine. I don't want to get rid of it, just let it wither on the vine. Now, I'm very proud of that. I'm proud that I am a member of the party that faced up to what was going on in this country back in 1940s with Harry Truman, in the 1960s with Lyndon Johnson. And so where would I be today were it not for the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 1965 Voting Rights Act? Where would I be living today were it not for the 1968 Fair Housing Law? And would I have ever gone to work in state government in South Carolina if we had not outlawed discrimination in 1972 in the public sector? And so that, all those things were delivered by the Democratic Party. And I think it's high time that we Democrats stop apologizing for being for the underdog, being for the little guy, and being for middle-income Americans. And for us to sit and spend all of our time in the campaign not facing up to that and moving forward, then I find it kind of interesting. I noticed that we have a guest today from the, I think I overheard from the Russian embassy. I went to the Soviet Union in 1972. My daughter went back in 1992. Now, when she left to go back, go over there in 1992, I said to her, I said, well, Mignon, I hope you really enjoy this trip. I really enjoyed going to the Soviet Union. And bring me a souvenir back. So when she got back, she presented me with an envelope with the souvenir in it, and I opened it, and it was a Polaroid picture of her. And I looked at her and said, what kind of souvenir is this? A Polaroid picture of you. She says, I thought you might want to see the difference of 20 years when you went as opposed to when I went. And I'm looking at the picture and I'm saying, well, what does this picture say? She was standing under the McDonald's Golden Arch. She was standing under that. And I felt so stupid that I didn't catch that. I point that out to say that nothing stays the same. We have to understand that this country is always moving like the pendulum on the clock. This country does not move linearly from point A to point B to point C. The country is always going back and forth, back and forth. The Supreme Court goes back and forth. Dred Scott to Plessy to Brown. The Congress always goes back and forth because the country goes back and forth. And I say to people all the time, the country tops out to the left and it goes back to the right, tops out to the right, goes back to the left, always passing through the center. And one of the things we ought to understand is when the country is moving from left to right, it passes to the center. When it moves from right to left, it passes to the center. The country spends twice as much time in the center as it does either the left or the right. It's the intervention of the voters that determine when it should top out and start back in the other direction. The country moved right this year. I believe, honestly, that if the voters intervene, as I hope they will, and sufficiently, we'll go back to the left in 2 years. Now, I've truncated this because I want you to answer a couple of questions. Ask me.
Okay, let's just try one quick one first, Jim, to the guts of it. Do you think that the immigration order will stick and the health law will stick, or will they be killed by 1,000 cuts on financing?
Well, I do believe that the executive order will stick. One thing about it, the Republicans will have 2 years for their lawsuit to mature or for them to run against it. And the next president will either reauthorize it or get rid of it. But I think we're going to have this for 2 years. Now, as far as the health care law needs to be tweaked. Remember, I just laid out a litany of things. When the Civil Rights Act, and I called the health care law the Civil Rights Act of the 21st century. When I was on the floor on the day that we passed the law, and I made my speech, I said, this is the Civil Rights Act of the 21st century, because all we were doing with the health care law, outlawing discrimination against people who get sick. We were saying no longer are you going to be allowed to discriminate against a woman as soon as she gets breast cancer or a man with prostate cancer. We are not going to allow you to discriminate against them. That's what this law is all about. And so I feel sincerely that we just took the first step, this immigration thing, first step. When the Civil Rights Act was passed in 1964, it started out as a big, comprehensive law. Couldn't get passed. So Lyndon Johnson jettisoned voting. He got rid of housing. These were real issues that riled the American people. They didn't want to see neighborhoods integrated, and they didn't want to see voting made easy. And so he got rid of all of that. Now, a lot of people, he even got rid of the public sector discrimination. When the Civil Rights Act was passed in 1964, it only outlawed discrimination in employment in the private sector. So after passing the law, jettisoned enough stuff to get the votes you needed to pass it. 1 year later, we got the Voting Rights Act. 3 years later, we got the Fair Housing Law. And then 4 years after that, we outlawed discrimination. We did not outlaw discrimination in the public sector until 1972. And so the same thing here. When I first said that this law must be done in such a way that they can be implemented incrementally, a lot of my friends on the left castigated me, even had people come to my office demonstrating in front of my office. And I laughed at them. So what are you talking about? Everything we've ever done big like this was done incrementally, and it should be done incrementally. We need to honor the fact that you should not bite off more than you can chew, as my grandma would say.
Okay, maybe one or two questions, and then Rebecca, run with the mic.
Can you speak to how the entire leadership party, the heads of the parties for both chambers, were reelected despite the record low approval rating of Congress, and what American people can expect them to do differently?
Well, the record low approval rating came of the Republican Congress. You see, even though everybody was rated pretty low, we were significantly above. Democrats were significantly above the Republicans. But let me say this in terms of leadership. You know, my dad used to tell me all the time, son, experience is the best teacher. I just recently published my memoirs, and by the way, Amazon.com gives it 5 stars. And I call it blessed experiences. There's this lady who got her copies back there. What I said in that book is all of my experiences have not been pleasant, but all of them I consider to be blessings. Sometimes you have to look back on the blessings to see it. Now, one of the things we just did on our side of the aisle, we are blending the old with the new, and I put myself among the old. But I'll tell you this, as I said to a media person who asked me the other day, I believe progressives, I believe Bob would much rather have a 74-year-old Thurgood Marshall than a 34-year-old Clarence Thomas.
Okay, maybe one more question. Go ahead, in the back.
Bill Earl, National Association of Beverage Importers. I'm a press club member in the building here. I wonder if you could comment on the approaching Ferguson decision and how this is going to roll out for Ferguson, the Midwest, and the rest of the country.
Well, one of the things I think should be highlighted by Ferguson is the fact that community participation, you cannot just drop out. It should highlight the fact that every election is important. And to me, much of the atmosphere that has been created in Ferguson is because local community people just fail to participate at the level that they should. I'm told that this community, 67% African American, with only 2 African Americans on the police force of 50 some odd people, that would never happen in my congressional district. Never. You know, I just don't understand that. I don't understand how you have an election, as they did have this past April, and only 6% of the people showed up to vote. And you wonder why you got an all-white school board. Come on. All of us got a responsibility to go out and participate. Now, when I said that before, some people said, I'm talking about protecting the elected class. This ain't about the elected class. This is about what decisions are going to be made on that school board. Who is going to hire the police chief? And who is going to oversee the police chief when he is refusing to integrate let his police force reflect the community that he represents? 67% African American, and only 2 out of 56 or 7 police officers are African American? Give me a break. There's something wrong with that. So I believe this highlights the fact that you just can't vote when there's a presidential election, because no president goes to your school board meeting. No president makes a determination as to whether or not the potholes get closed, street lights get installed. These are local decisions, and they are just as important in many instances as who sits in the White House.
Okay, thank you,
Tell me
Congressman.
I've got to go. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
And we are adjourned. He's got a raise, guys.